We need to be able to have conversations without feeling like we're going to say something that gets us thrown in jail because people happen to be offended.
Skepticism. Do you know what you believe?
All right, guys, we are live with another Pangburn Hangout. Let me just see if I'm still feeding. 2, 2, 1, 2. Check. Oh, this isn't feeding. Let's try this. Well, maybe it's not going to feed to the radio. Doesn't look like you guys can hear me. Check. You'll be able to hear me on Discord, I think. Check. Let's see. Check. I'll get that sorted out. Anyways, those of you who are on our new radio station will not be able to hear this, but we do have a new 24/7 station. I'm getting used to my new setup here. I have no mic feedback coming into my ears, so this is kind of weird. But Live 365 online internet radio. We will have Pangburn content running 24/7 there. We will sometimes have events running on there. You can listen to one of our live discussions between famous intellectuals. But for the most part, you're going to hear these Pangburn Hangout conversations. We have a lot of them. And you're really going to get to know our amazing Discord community. And if you want to become a part of that community, you'll find our Discord link if you just search the Pangburn Hangout anywhere online. It'll bring you to our YouTube channel, and you'll find the link to connect with us on Discord. I'm trying to get used to this new setup I got. I'm really thrown off. I have a bunch of different things running on my screen now, so I have to get used to that, but it's all good. We still have a couple minutes here. Yeah, today's topic, bad culture. Mace is already in the chat saying, I guarantee this conversation will be mostly about Islam. What a guy. I don't know if I should mess with this right now. That's probably not a good idea. Well, if that one's for that, I wonder if I turn my mic on here. Let me try this. I hope I don't destroy everything I worked on today. Oh, maybe it'll just let me input this mic. Let's try. Check. All right. Now I think you guys can hear me on our new radio signal. I don't know if you call it a station. But yeah, this station, guys, this is the first episode. This is kind of a troubleshooting day. But I'm reading meters, so I think you can hear me. I set it up so the one thing I'm missing. Ooh, what if I do this, actually? I have an idea. Check. Check one. You know, I just may have sorted this out. It does feel really quiet. Oh, let me try this. Check, check. Oh. Check, check, check. Two, two, two. All right. Eliyahu, how's it going today? Oh, I have to change something up. I got to adjust my settings because I changed everything. My input is still going to be that, but my output's going to be there. Are you there, Eliyahu?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, yeah. I got you now. Check, check, check. Oh, okay. I have a new setup happening here, so I'm just testing all that.
How is it?
It's all good. I think, well, this is the first test for everything, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we're live on our new internet radio station. It's at Live 365. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll have 24/7 Pangburn content running, and sometimes we'll go live, and sometimes they'll just be getting playback of old conversations. So,
Internet radio, way of the future.
yeah. So bad culture seems to be
Yeah,
a lot
so
of
this
it
was
still around.
yeah. So this was so you had the original idea for this. Your original title for it was "Culture That Sucks," and I'm wondering if you had specific ideas in mind of cultures that suck or cultural practices that suck.
Yeah. Oh, they're telling me on YouTube I have a noise in my mic. Just yeah, I switched everything up today, guys. I might have to just quickly close OBS and open it back up. Just give me 2 seconds, Eliyahu.
No problem.
I hope that fixed it for everyone. Check, check, 1, 2. All right. Yeah. So, for in the West, we have, cancel culture. I think this is a bad culture. We should move away from that. It stifles the war of ideas. We have the culture of machismo that I think is the leading cause of death for all men. And this stems to, being too macho to go to the doctor, erring on the side of macho-ness, even if it means sacrificing certain pleasures in your life that could really be of benefit. So there's a couple examples. I'll send everyone an invite. Let them know we're live. Did you copy all that, Eliyahu?
Sorry, you just had to open up OBS again?
Oh yeah, I just stated that cancel culture and things like machismo I think are really bad for society. Machismo being the leading cause of death in males, and it stems to lack of medical awareness or ignorance driven by this drive to want to be macho.
Yeah, and I'd like to also point out that I don't think that it's because of the patriarchy, or at least not only because of the patriarchy. There are a lot of who are shame men who try to draft dodge or
right.
who are not doing risky behavior.
Right. I'm just sending everyone an invite.
To make that point. Sick and tired of all these things, of that machismo thing all being blamed on the patriarchy.
Oh, yeah, I know. There we go. Yeah, it's like it, and
probably
people
agree with that. The machismo being like a pretty destructive force in the lives of a lot of young men. Like whenever a guy gets told to be a man. Luckily, I don't think I was told that in my childhood. I don't think, but almost every other I know has been told that.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, there was a lot of growing up. Small town attitude towards what it means to be a man and what men do. There was a lot of people, I think, stifled by that kind of nonsense.
I wouldn't mind it as much if I was being told what I was getting in return for being a man.
Right.
Like, okay, you're giving me this long list of obligations and shit I got to do. What am I getting for all this? What am I getting for the fact that I'm required to just lay down and die?
Right.
Like for just the fact that like I'm supposed to look at my body and my future as just totally expendable for who? For what?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't feel like I was ever given the pamphlet outlining the perks of this.
Right.
You can't scientifically tell me to be a man and then emasculate me.
Right. That's not man enough. I've for
either
one
that or like, for example, if you're going to give me this machismo thing that like I've got to do, I'm required to do this, I'm required to do that, and chivalry and sacrificing myself for women or for children or whatever it is,
right.
Then that should entail with it certain privileges. Am I wrong?
Well, some women might say, well, that's why you get a piece.
Oh, yeah? You're going to have to sweeten the deal a little bit. Like, because that's I don't know, that's not enough for me. I need some kind of, like, let me put it this way. If you want a man that's going to lead, you have to be a woman that's willing to follow.
Interesting.
That's the way I would see it.
Right. Well, because, yeah, I guess one way of saying that, people say, I want a dominant man in my life.
Yeah, exactly. But then when push comes to shove and then he wants to do something that you don't want to do, you know, are you going to be willing to quell your ego and say, look, I know this is what I want, but I've chosen to follow his guidance. And I said I wanted somebody who was dominant. So even though it's not exactly what I would want, we're going to go with his decision.
Right.
That would be more fair to me.
Right. Have you had experiences like that where there's like a total power struggle like that?
A little bit, but I've never been the kind of guy that wanted to be particularly dominant.
Right.
So it's never been like it's never like there's been an arrangement where, okay, you've decided that I'm going to be the dominant one, and now we have to choose where we're going to live, and we've weighed the pros and cons, and I've listened to your input, but I think that we should live here, and you're going to listen to me. Like, I've never been in a situation like that. Like, it's always been a compromise. But I can understand the frustration at guys who are trying to live up to this machismo and then getting dicked over.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Are you that machismo? Well, I don't think you are. I think that you're the compromise. Women is my equal type.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I have a dominant personality. But I'm a very zen dude. So there's few things I would ever say like, I have a problem with this. Like I have a hard time listing things I have a problem with.
Yeah, well, for you, it's as long as it's as long as she can make it come, right?
Are you one of those picky eaters too? Like you just can't eat certain things?
There's a couple of things, but I don't know. It's not a deal breaker for me if the person likes foods that I don't like.
Right. Interesting. Yeah,
I don't know.
Gary G on YouTube says men naturally lead. If that's what you want, then don't tolerate anything else. No need to complain.
Well, the thing is, whether or not men want to lead, they're going to have to. Like, let me put it this way. This is going to sound so offensive, but I don't care. Like, what I say is that it's kind of like giving a child a steering wheel in the passenger seat and making them think that they can drive the car when they're not actually driving the car. So, like, she can
make them think that you gave up some ground.
Right. Well, they think that they want an equal say and they want compromise. But so often I find that when push comes to shove, when there's actually an emergency situation at hand, they're going to immediately, like it's almost like clockwork. They look at me with large, wide, wet eyes and defer to me and expect me to know what to do.
Right.
It's like all of a sudden, it's like, do something. Hey, Zombie.
Yeah. Oh, Zombie's mic is fucked. She's just here to listen.
Oh, but Zombie. Okay, so I'm just gonna take that silence as tacit agreement.
Yeah, we can say anything, and Zombie is just she's in. She has to obey.
Let's see.
So, okay. So what are some other examples of bad culture out there?
Well,
what about putting these rings? What about putting these rings around the young ladies' necks in order to make them longer?
Oh, I remember reading about that. I don't know exactly where they do that, but it looks awful. It looks so painful.
Yeah, I've never seen one of those girls do an interview and be like, "Yeah, I like this." Like not once.
Oh, he tells me also foot binding.
Yeah, and foot binding too. That's another one. But yeah, how about, is there anything worse than slicing little baby dicks? Like that's got to be the worst.
That is pretty darn awful. And that's why I don't really like this phrase bad culture, because I think that it's all on a scale, right? This practice is worse than that. This practice is better than that.
Well, it's a conversation about morality, right? Really.
Yeah. So we're not exactly, I wouldn't call the culture that I live in a good culture. I would just call it better than a lot of others.
Right.
Like a lot of the practice better, but like hopefully by the time my grandchildren are around, it'll be a lot better than it is now.
We haven't even got to like the Middle East yet. Mace brought that up. He thought it was all going to be about Islam.
Oh yeah. Well, again, you want to, I mean, one of the most common criticisms levied against Middle Eastern culture is FGM. But you brought up, male genital mutilation, which is also barbaric, and nobody seems to care about it. It's so weird to me that everyone, but then again, everybody does that. Everyone defends it when it's in their culture. So for example, if you go, I bring up this example a lot. In Britain, there's a television license. And if you talk to people in Britain about it, they're like, what, so you think that any psychopath should just be allowed to watch television without doing a background check on them? And like in the United States and Canada, we're like, yeah, like what's the big fucking deal about anybody watch television? They're like, well, we need to make sure that pedophiles aren't watching television because they could be watching kids programs. They could
be watching children. Yeah.
And you're
and how deep does that go? Like, do you drill into their head to drill out the pedophilia? Like, Like, what do you like? You're not just by, yeah. I don't get that level of, protection that really no one else is thinking of. Just the hyper worriers.
Yeah, the hyper worriers. Yeah, then you need a license to shampoo hair and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also like the way.
Where would we be if we didn't have shampoo licenses?
I mean, and the way that a lot of these men who are kind of fundamentalist religious in the Middle East, how they talk about women, just like, I'm not going to have my women walking around like that. Fundamental problem with how you're viewing that other human being if you're talking about them like that. Like, I would say that as a joke just to get a rise out of my girlfriend, but they're not joking.
Yes. Yeah. And I've heard on like a much smaller scale in the West, nothing like that. But there are a lot of times where guys say something about their wives or their girlfriends or the locker room talk that really bothers me. Well, some of it is just retarded. Like, you're supposed to joke about being like an asshole. Like, it's supposed to be a joke in those settings. And then someone will be like, yeah. And then your wife keeps changing the channel and then you just have to smack her in the face. Right. And then you're all like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah. That's really weird. Yeah. But I hear that. I hear stuff like that. Like when an actual abuser tries to get into the fun, but then their fundamental problems with their morality show their face almost instantly. Kind of like grab him by the pussy. Well, it's like the grab him by the pussy thing is like, I think that would be funny because, guys usually aren't actually talking about grabbing them by the pussy. They're taking it to an absurd level to make someone laugh, I think. Like, I've said way worse stuff than that to my guy friends in the hockey dressing room just to make them laugh. Dressing room? Sure. We're all taking our pants off, our cocks are hanging out. Yeah, I've never been comfortable with that either. Why not, man? Just get in the shower with me. We'll soap each other's ass. I don't know. I was like in Israel and they were like, oh, we should all go in this mikvah and like take a bath together. And I was like, no, I was the only one out of like 20 guys, all 19 other guys. They all go in there and they're all like sitting in this bathtub naked. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Just ball sweat tub. Yeah, it was like, oh gosh. Like, and they're like, oh, let's all dunk our heads in for like some spiritual. I would be the one guy putting my face in this water. You know what? I would be the one guy that stayed standing so that when my buddies brought their heads up, they'll realize that their head was so close to my junk.
No, we all know what you would do in that situation.
I would just be helicoptering across the top.
And do the part as they went down.
Zombie would do in that situation.
Yeah, what was zombie? Zombie is going to be bobbing for apples for sure.
No. I would not even go near nasty water like that. That would gross me out. I won't even take a bath anymore because that just grosses me out. Like, I know there's so much.
That's funny. It reminds me of my dad. He doesn't like going to this natural hot spring that's near my hometown. And one time he went there when he was young and there was a piece of shit floating by him. And I think that scarred him for life. Like, he's like, yeah. People just go in there and shit.
That's so weird.
I had to go to the to my iPad since my phone's broken because I kept texting or messaging different things, and I'm like, okay, just participate. Yeah. No, I mean, your mic's sounding fine.
Yeah, well, if we want the best...
This is my iPad, it's not my phone.
Oh, okay.
If we want the best example of bad culture, though, I have been to BronyCon. That is...
Is that bronies and shit?
Yeah, a bunch of grown men.
Is it?
What the fuck were you doing there?
So I was at a different convention that happened to be in the same building at the same time. But we turn the corner and there's like a whole festival of grown men dressed up as ponies, holding hands in a
What?
circle, singing the
Good
My
God.
Little song.
PonyCon?
Yeah, BronyCon. A bunch of
BronyCon.
grown men that are obsessed with My Little Pony, and
they-
they come from all over the world to dress up like My Little Pony and sing the My Little Pony theme song.
Do they
together.
whack it? Do they whack it to that cartoon? Like, is this
probably.
Oh,
Okay,
fuck.
that's kind of weird.
Fucking Christ.
Just
Was
FYI,
there a
Travis, there
following?
are
Like,
there
how many
are
people were out there?
What was that,
yeah,
Doolittle?
just FYI, Travis, there are explicit My Little Pony knockoff cartoons out there.
Are you serious? I got to do some
I'm
fucking
not
Googling.
I'm not joking.
I got to do some
Not
Googling.
joking.
There are some.
Doolittle,
It's
are
kind
you a
of weird.
brony?
Yeah, Doolittle, are you a brony? Come on, man. Tell us.
No.
Why is it called a brony? Brothers
It's a
Swipe
My Little Pony
Ponies?
bro.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and it was the weirdest thing. And there's like a whole daycare, and you'd think that the daycare would be like for the kids because the kids are the ones who are watching My Little Pony. But no, it's so that these older people can slag off their kids for the day in this daycare
Jesus.
while they go and dress up like ponies. And I don't even know. I don't know what they do exactly while they're dressed up as ponies.
Like, wait a minute. How many people were there? Like 5?
Hundreds,
10?
hundreds and hundreds of people.
Thousands of
Where
them.
was this at? Where was this at?
Hey, guys,
This was
just everyone who's listening, feel free to share the stream if you're feeling very generous. But I just shared
Looking this
on
up,
Twitter and stuff.
I went to go
Yeah.
see what was supposedly the final BronyCon in Baltimore in 2019, and it says here that their attendance in 2019 was 10,215 people.
What?
Wow. That's
Hold on,
great.
these people are so fucking weird.
Yeah, how does something like that get created?
Well,
Like, how does
I
that
think
spread?
it's just sexual fantasy. I think it's
I know locally we have some weird events here. Like
What kind?
Well, I mean, there's people that dress up like as zombies. I think that's kind of fun though. But well, freaking for instance, the naked bike ride. We get 10,000 people on naked bikes riding around Portland one night.
why do people like doing that?
I don't know. I just know that there's a bunch of freaks afterwards that are sniffing bicycle seats.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah, no.
like. I just think of
Riding bikes
stink.
naked is perfectly healthy.
When I hear that, I just think stink. Oh, Doolittle is a nude bikist.
Yeah, no, just don't catch your balls in the chain. You're fine.
Yeah, well, no, like I would be like, I've had a bad bike accident before. That would be like road rash all over your body.
Yikes! So much pain.
Yeah, people paint their bodies and do all sorts of other stuff. I don't know. I just don't think it'd be comfortable for my bare ass to be on a bike seat. They're uncomfortable enough as they are.
No, for me, anything I'm doing outside, if I do it with less clothes on, it's generally more fun and feels better.
Oh yeah, no, like I get on my elliptical naked.
Naked.
I do absolutely everything naked. Grocery shop, everything.
Well, yeah. Now that we can grocery shop online,
Exactly.
pretty
You
much
picked up.
I've done big webinars. Well, not totally naked, but definitely in my nightgown.
You picked up what I was throwing down there. I like it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, what are some other Doolittle? What are some bad cultures out there, man?
Well, I'm originally from Las Vegas.
Oh fuck!
City of
Where do I start?
The
Where do I
city of
start?
sin.
And not the sin
The
part.
city of
That's
sin.
not so bad. The what really bugs me is when people I mean, what makes me sad, it doesn't anger me or anything, but people are degenerate gamblers, and there's a real pathological state that you can get into. There's a really, I mean, and people just, that's their life is they come home from work, they freaking sit down at a video poker machine and put their whole paycheck in until it's gone.
Rough.
And they often get free drinks while they're doing it.
Wow.
And that's their life. They freaking go to work, they play video poker, they go home and cry about how they don't have any money left. I suppose I don't know, unless they hit a royal flush, and you know, and that's, you know, basically video poker. You lose between 1% and 2% on average every time you push the button, and the more you put in, the more you lose on average. You know, in the long run. And there's people that just are trapped in this cycle of. I mean, it's a game, right? But you get these little dopamine hits every time you win something.
Yeah, man.
And people just get trapped in that cycle, and they have nothing to look forward to in their life except for going back and maybe hitting that button a couple of more times.
Fuck, I have to.
So it doesn't seem that dissimilar to video games.
Well, I was just gonna say that. Yeah. Except for they're not losing a shitload of money; they're just losing their time.
Yeah, you can sit there and play. I guess if you play on like these pay to win games on your phone, you know, you could spend a lot of money on something like Candy Crush. Oh. You want to buy the little extra booster? It's only $5.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. Or like Fortnite, which was all the rage of what the kids were playing. It's scarily addictive.
Well, it's not the addictive behavior that bugs me. It's the addictive behavior on something that they're playing. They're originally playing it to hope to win some money, but it's actually just a trap.
Right. Right.
Like, to me, I don't know. To me, a video game is just like, it's a way to get out of the real world and into some other fantasy land that I can play around in.
Right, or just ignore the real life. How many people
I've seen people
that live in Vegas or move to Vegas are moving there because of the gambling? Do you think quite a few?
No, I mean, there's a lot of people that just live there. They just grew up there, and
right.
So, but I go there is
locating there.
You're relocating there, Zom?
No. I'm just saying, like, how many people have relocated there just to be in that atmosphere? Like, I think it's the most. I hate Vegas because, like, what I mean, and I've had to go for business meetings or whatever, conferences, and it's like it's so much despair. You go through the lobby and then you're just looking around, and you know, in the ages ago when there was all that smoking in there was like this cloud of this haze in the room, and then you have all these old people on freaking scooters that are just intently playing games, and you just hear all of this noise, and it's just like, it's sick. You're looking at it like, God, what do they come in here and age 20 years?
Yeah, when you're in your early 20s, it can be a blast. You know, you go, you know, you don't lose that much money because you don't have that much to lose.
Right.
Yeah, I was there long ago, just before I turned 21, so I wasn't able to fully enjoy it. One of the places, but I do know several people that went there and had a Vegas wedding.
Huh.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, like, there's a lot of cool stuff, like sights to see and tours to take, and like just beautiful art all over the place on the strip area, on the Las Vegas Strip, the Las Vegas Boulevard area. Just amazing architectural work on those resort casinos.
Yeah.
Really,
I want to visit that Heart Attack Grill.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. One time, it's just they have funny names for hamburgers, but then there's nothing more to it than that, really. And if you're into
Well,
into strippers and the nighttime sex worker scene, there's a lot of that kind of stuff there.
yes. Well, not in Vegas directly, but I've always been curious to go to the bunny.
Yeah, you just you looked, but you
Well-
don't know how to see, I suppose.
Well, supposedly the girls are not supposed to sell sex in Vegas. They have to go outside
and
Vegas.
that's not the brothels are outside of Vegas, where there's actually
Right, but it's
establishments that you can go to, and it's highly regulated. It's not like a free for all kind of thing like you go to Mexico or something.
yeah. Well,
but there are
Vegas
quite a lot of
for that.
there are quite a lot of prostitutes in Las Vegas proper. It's no small number.
Oh, I know. They take them from all over the U.S. and traffic them there.
I wouldn't say traffic them. Sounds like that's like a verb.
I've pulled out tons and tons of minors.
You're talking about minors. I'm just
adults,
talking about ordinary people,
and adults.
ordinary, college age girls that are adults.
Yeah.
That's just how they pay for their way through college instead of working at an ordinary job.
You can justify that, but no, I've pulled out plenty of traffickers there also from my area that take girls there purposefully to traffic them. That's sex trafficking. And
if they're minors, that's an awful thing to do.
And adults, young adults.
Well, if they're adults, I don't know, that's just getting a ride to Vegas.
No, it's not. Look at the federal guidelines to trafficking. Force, fraud, coercion, intimidation. If they're intimidating them into it, that's a different story. That's called sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Exchange of sex for anything of value with the third party exploiter, or if they have a minor. But I don't want to divert off of Bobby's convo.
Yeah, so what the laws are in Oregon is one thing, and what the laws are in Nevada are another thing.
I know. I was just talking to a detective from Vegas yesterday who arrested a pimp from Portland, and one of his adult females was there. He has a baby with her. It's just whether we actually move forward on the case, because there's so many of them with minors that it's easier to prosecute those, frankly.
So is that a state crime you're talking about, or is it a federal crime that you're prosecuting?
Both. It just depends. There's different.
So you're prosecuting the guy in Oregon for something he did in Nevada that's legal in Nevada?
No, he's in the clinker in Nevada right now. He's in custody.
And was he doing this in Clark County or Washoe County?
Clark.
Yeah. So just for everyone's knowledge, in Nevada, there's no state law against prostitution, but there are county law. There are county ordinances.
Well, I believe there are also county laws against trafficking. So even though you're not gonna prosecute the girls anyway. Most of the time.
Yeah. So in Nevada, it's a highly regulated industry, and the counties that do have legal brothels, there are very strict rules about how you can do things like recruiting them and testing them for sexually transmitted diseases, and there has to be, you can't have unprotected sex and all this kind of stuff. So, and it has to be in a controlled, licensed facility. You can't do prostitution just like random, meet me out at the third sagebrush on the left. You can't do that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to hit the gavel.
Okay. That's bad culture.
Yeah, bad culture. No, I'm not really, as I said earlier, I'm not really a fan of that term because I think that it's all on a sliding scale. Because our grandchildren will likely find our culture to suck. or to find a large part of it to suck.
I hope someone finds a large part of me to suck.
What?
Nothing.
Yeah. Like I find myself, saying asking my grandparents why they did X, Y, and Z, and they have to look at me with mouth agape, and all they can say is, "Look, we didn't know it was wrong. Okay, we didn't know any better. We did our best with what we knew," and that's when I know I'm going to be saying that to my grandchildren. I didn't know it was wrong. I didn't know it was bad culture. So I feel like it's all on a scale, but I see Big Lebowski and Gala in here. Do either of you guys have anything you want to say on the subject of quote unquote bad culture?
Bad culture? What do you mean? Like you're talking.
Yeah, bad culture. Yeah, Gala, you can say anything you'll like about that. What do you think about bad culture?
Bad culture, like the bad things within culture?
Yeah, do you have examples of what you think is bad culture? It could be within your own or within a different culture.
I guess not caring about certain things that affect people as a whole, like veganism, certain things like intersex surgery, circumcision. Like, people are not being open to having these conversations. If like these conversations are really compelling, like these conversations affect people as a whole. When people talk about stuff like veganism, you should be willing to hear their points. Like, why are they a vegan? Not just be like, I don't care, I eat what I want.
So you kind of are saying that like you don't like adherence to tradition.
No, I think he's saying bigotry. I think he's saying he doesn't like bigotry.
Yeah, bigotry, not necessarily culture, because I mean every culture has something someone doesn't agree with, and I'm sure there's things like bigotry, pretty much, and I think that's really messed up. And as open-minded as we have become, I think that we have also become really close-minded at the same time. Like, there are these two sides: the people that are very open-minded and not just liberal with what they accept, as in like they have like selective facts that they just choose which is a fact.
Yeah, I have a feeling that is universal. Like, I feel like there's so many people that do that no matter where you are in the world. You know what I mean? Like, everyone, it's very hard to find people that are true philosophers. Like, almost everyone has selective amnesia for data that they don't like.
Can I ask who believes Trump
There's a word for that.
Fairly won the election or not? Who believes and who don't believe that? Is there anybody?
No, hold on a second. Before we address that, I just want to say there's a word for your selection of facts. It's called confirmation bias.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm confirmation bias, but then again, that's not like confirmation bias isn't necessarily that. Confirmation bias is like the tendency, so not necessarily always. Like, even if I believe in a certain thing, I have a tendency, but I'll still hold the beliefs that I have, and then I'll look at it and see if it's nonsense.
But it's more like, it's on a perceptual basis. The confirmation bias is more like you have a tendency to only look for and therefore only see things that confirm your presupposed ideas.
Yeah, you're right.
And perfectly salient information that you should have seen if you didn't have a preconception will be ignored, and it's not your fault. It's just your brain filters out that kind of stuff. It happens
But it's
to everybody.
It's the lead to the conclusion that these people or group in general are bad, which isn't the case. That's not true.
No, I don't know. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Nivik.
Confirmation bias is to lead to a negative viewpoint to a particular group
No, it doesn't have anything to do with groups.
If you have a
Oh.
negative viewpoint towards a group, you will say something that aligns with that negative viewpoint in confirmation biases, of negative confirmation bias.
No,
These
confirmation
people are
bias
like
is
this,
about
and they
perception.
do these bad things and those bad things. Well, of course, they are this group or that group. Of course, they would do those bad things and these bad things. That confirms with the negative viewpoint that you already had of both those people. I don't get what I'm saying so hard to understand. It leads to the negative viewpoint that you already had of those people in confirmation bias. You say negative lining things.
No. If you have to have a negative viewpoint in the first place, it doesn't lead to something that already exists.
Yeah.
You can have
It confirms with
confirmation
your
of
biases.
a positive
If your bias
viewpoint.
is negative.
Yeah, you can have
it confirms
confirmation
your
bias of a
negative
positive
bias.
viewpoint as well. It's just you have a presupposition, and this is why skepticism is so important. If you want
He's
to
not talking
eliminate
negative.
most of your biases,
He's
But
not
why
talking
does it
positive.
have
He's
to be a
talking negative.
negative
He's saying
bias?
people
it doesn't have to be a negative
It
bias.
could
It
be-
doesn't
it
have
could
to be
be a
towards a group.
positive
That's not what
bias.
the guy's talking about. He's talking about negative. That people like to believe
Who is?
things that aren't true.
It
And
is.
I'm connecting a
No,
negative
it could be
thing of aren't true of people
also.
being bad in general. Some people have a view of people being
There's good
bad in
things that aren't
general.
true too.
People have a negative viewpoint of a certain group of people just being bad in general. And a confirmation bias would be you saying negative things
Nivik,
to
did you
align
just
with the negative viewpoints of people.
did you just drink a Monster Energy drink or what? He's on fire.
Yeah. Okay. I think we all get. I was just putting the name on the thing that Gala was alluding to, so that we all.
I just had to take a brief phone call
Look at
for
the
about a
southern-
minute.
look
Is
at
that? And so I
the southern-
deafened myself. Is that what was going on for the last minute?
Yeah, so
That's
Gala
another certain
said
strategy. Look
that
that up. That's confirmation bias.
Gala was pointing out that that it's bad culture. That there's some bad culture where people ignore certain information if it doesn't fit what they're hoping for or something like that. And I just said that's called confirmation bias. Just so if anybody's listening that wants to get deeper into how to eliminate that in yourself, you can look up confirmation bias, and there's all kinds of stuff about how to get around confirmation bias, so you don't actually
Did you
experience
say confirmation slide?
bias. BIAS.
No, I mean like there's ways to get out of it, and you were like confirmation what?
No. What I'm saying is, if you look up confirmation bias, then you will find information on
How to
that particular cognitive impairment.
Confirmation, negative confirmation bias leads to negative, false views of people of particular groups.
Also, guys, I just want to say
Yeah.
I'm encouraging you all, and you, Nivik. I don't even think I've seen you there yet, but to engage in the text chat on our YouTube live stream. Yeah, we're getting into it there, so let's go.
Wait, you're having a live stream right now?
Yeah, so any channel here that says live will always be live.
So like we're being recorded?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
not.
we're gonna demonetize him on YouTube again. I'm gonna go get my headset so that I don't have to shout into a silly microphone.
Speaking of the subjects I brought up, veganism and circumcision. What is your opinion on like veganism? Like the moral view of vegans.
Well, that's not really the subject,
we
but
talked long about veganism. Hours.
I'm happy to talk about maybe make that the subject for my discussion next week or something. But I do think that it is an important cultural difference to discuss. But I'm not sure that I'm not going to call carnivore culture bad culture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think it's bad. I think it's good, but it's just, like we have to respect each other and know what's right, what's wrong. Or this is this is not a very common subject, but like circumcision, like a lot of people that
common subject around here.
Oh, it is?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, man, you're in the right place for uncommon subjects.
Are you guys like pro or like anti?
There's a collection of different ideologies and specific ideas across the whole spectrum in this Discord. But everyone comes together and has good faith conversations about it. So that's what this Discord's all about.
But to open the hour, I think Pangburn said that one of the worst cultural practices, in his opinion, is slicing baby dicks.
Yes.
And I don't know if I'd say it's the worst, but I think it's probably in the top 5.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't say it's the worst, but I wouldn't say it's a top 5 either. I don't even know what to say.
It is a hard it is a hard experiment to try and find something that's worse that's culturally accepted.
What about the clitoris?
But that's not accepted, at least not here.
Yeah, the clitoris isn't accepted here, but you're right, Nivik. If we're looking at cultural acceptance circles on the other side of the world that do accept clitorectomy as a reasonable practice to perform on a little girl, yeah, that's a really bad one.
Yeah, if you like, I can go get my copy of Ayaan Hirsi Ali's book, as she describes in great detail what they did to her when they gave her her clitorectomy.
Yeah.
And the reason, and what really is awful about that is she got bullied for years in elementary school for still having a clitoris, like bullied so harshly, like you feel so terrible for her that you're like, well, then like, you know, her grandmother, like, you know, pinned her arms and legs down on the table while the doctor, you know,
yikes,
removed it.
What kind of digs, like what kind of like jokes or meanness, like what would that look like? What would they say, like, oh, you're going to be just a dirty little whore because you still have your clitoris?
Probably. There was a name that they used to call her, Kintirli, but I don't know what that means. It's maybe Arabic for something like that. Kintirli, actually. But it's like a really derogatory.
Right.
Yeah, here we go. I have it here. Okay. Let's see. We poked out our tongues at my old. Let's see. Here's what she says. I want to figure out a good way to start. My older cousin used to take me to fighting practice after school when I was about 5 or 6. I was encouraged to pick a fight with a classmate who was encouraged to pick a fight with me. We poked out our tongues at each other, made faces at each other, and called each other names. You are low, accursed, shameful, dishonorable, Kintirli. Then, surrounded by cheering older relatives, we went at each other. We kicked, scratched, bit one another, wrestled until we were covered in bruises, our little dresses torn. You were defeated if you gave up first or if you cried or ran away. But that doesn't directly address the circumcision question. So I'm not exactly sure what that word means. But it's probably something equivalent to a straight man being called a faggot or something.
Right. Solomon L. Mimi says, just want to clarify that FGM is not as common in this part of the world as you might think. Which is true. It's not like, I don't think it would be like common practice like in the United States with male infant genital cutting.
Yeah, I actually don't. Did we say where we thought it was practiced? I mean, I always thought it was mainly practiced in sub-Saharan Africa, not the Middle East.
Yeah, Africa, some parts of the Middle East, but not much. It's mostly in Africa, though.
And I would also mention it's not exclusively a Muslim phenomenon by any means. There are a lot of Christian communities that do it as well.
Right.
Sub-Saharan Africa.
What?
But either way, I don't see what the fucking point is.
Yeah, what the fuck? Like, seriously, you have a little kid and it's like, yeah, let's cut off a piece of their genitalia that serves 15 medical functions and, yeah, just throw it away. That's fine. Like, let's keep doing it without really questioning and continuing to question anything with regards to this. Something that you would it's like there are some things that's like, okay, you didn't continue to question whether you should have another McDonald's cheeseburger this week. Yeah, fair enough. But like your child's genitalia.
Yeah, don't you think back to women shouldn't be allowed to enjoy sex, and if they do, they will be promiscuous?
Sure, yeah.
It was the same argument made by Maimonides for male genital mutilation. That goes all the way back to the Rambam, the rabbi who first said that the purpose of this is to deprive the male of sexual pleasure as much as possible.
It's really these Egyptian priests.
Wow.
I think it's the earliest example we have. They're the ones that fucked it up for everyone because, as far as I can tell, they were doing it for fashion reasons to themselves.
That's like the foot binding.
Right. Like, fuck. Some fucked up apes out there.
Which I think just became illegal in Japan recently.
Right.
The foot binding.
That's amazing. Like, Japan's a place where I think that kind of nuance would be very hard to achieve.
Yeah, I read something. I'll have to go look for it, but it was just within the last few weeks.
Interesting.
Wait, what became illegal in Japan?
Foot binding.
Oh, people are still doing that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What about arranged marriages?
That's just messed up. If it works for you, then it works out for you. But I think majority of the people, they aren't like the most happiest.
They
have.
Yeah, I have a problem. I think it's not in line with freedom, individual freedom, and I think individual freedom is really important when considering your overall well-being, ownership of your body and what you do with it, because there's a lot of things that come with being arranged to marry someone else. So yeah, that would be on my list of bad cultural practices.
So, Mr. Pangburn, how did you become a philosopher?
I was born. Well, I'll tell you what I think about philosophy, science, and art. I think we are all artists, philosophers, and scientists. Although some people practice it professionally, I think we all do it for the pleasure of doing so. So that's what I have to say about labels and who's a professional, who's not, and yeah.
So you didn't actually like study or etc. All that crazy. I see what you're saying. That's
I studied.
Cool.
Of course, I've studied a lot. I didn't engage much with traditional styles of learning, and part of the reason was because I'm autodidactic. I have a really hard time learning from teachers in a classical setting. So a lot of my knowledge and everything I know kind of in the academic sense is self-taught.
That's cool, man. Do you know where should people go? Like, where should they start? Like, as in, like, what book or what YouTube channel or just some sort of website like that gives you like the basic outline as to what exactly you should know in chronological order?
You want to start with skepticism. So understanding what skepticism is, the mechanism we use to determine bullshit from reality, and the act of questioning and continuing to question anything. So refining that model and understanding that it applies to everything that emerges in the mind. Things that you are so certain about, like you're so certain that someone cheated on you, or you're so certain that this rock is going to break that window. All of these things ought to be met by your skeptical foundation and analyzed. Once you get used to doing it, basically what happens is you find that you're not making an emotional knee-jerk reactions to things and commitments to things. This is where wisdom comes from. Skepticism is the graduated form of wisdom, what people meant by wisdom.
That's a good one. Like, I have a finger or two on epistemology. I listen to like Matt Dillahunty, not like everything, all the technical terms.
Yeah.
I think I agree with what you said. Like, in a sense, like we're all technically philosophers, Right? We don't have to necessarily study. Philosophy is a way of thinking.
Yeah,
And
I would argue that you, Gala, too, are a scientist as well, and you're an artist. It's just you will do these to very much lower degrees than someone who's actually an expert or doing it for a living. Like when you go out and you engage in scientific discovery, when you go on a walk outside, when you go out in nature and you're looking at new things, looking under rocks, maybe going fishing, like all of these things root in our in scientific inspiration or artistic inspiration. So yeah, I think I'm not one that gets caught up in labels too much. I'm more interested in what people believe and why, and their how at what stage the clarity of their mind is at, and where it can be improved. Those are the kinds of things that really interest me.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a scientist. It contradicts the definition of scientist, but I see you're not really into like labels, like stuff that like philosopher. I like that one because you don't necessarily have to study all that technical stuff. We all have different ways of thinking, and so I think that that's evident. But scientist, no, I call myself a scientist because it just contradicts the definition of a scientist. But I am, I guess, somewhat of a scientist. Like, you ever heard of the no true Scotsman fallacy?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like this, I'm not committing the fallacy, but like it would be okay if I said I'm not a true scientist.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right to cite the no true Scotsman fallacy because this ends up heading down that road. I don't want to take away from Eliyahu though, or maybe I'll throw this to. It looks like we got Wise Ape and Bruno in the room. What are some bad cultural practices, you guys?
Sorry, I've got a mouthful of food.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, I would agree. Stuffing your mouth full of food is a bad cultural practice.
Talking with.
No.
What about cultures who are fine talking with food in their mouth at the dinner table?
I mean, I would say that's fine because that's if there's no harm and it's not a big problem, then and
it's a joke.
Sure, I think it's fine.
No, but there are different cultural practices of how fast you eat and how much at a given sitting. And what I'm talking about is there's good ways to eat that, and that help engage the social mind when you're eating with other people. And then there's the U.S. Navy way of eating, which is stuff as much food in your mouth for 15 minutes and then get up because you're done.
I'm a really fast eater.
Yeah, me too. I always eat like like I haven't eaten in 3 days.
Which
is probably pretty rude, I suppose.
It's fine when you're 20, but when you're 40, it really catches up with you in the midsection.
Right.
All right. So that cultural practices. It's funny. I was on a call with a friend. She's a Malaysian, and she was telling me about some argument she had with an argument between two of her friends on. I think the premise was I think one of her friends was arguing from the point of I think morality, and the other was arguing from culture. Essentially, the topic was child marriages in, I would say, I don't know if it's a predominantly typical thing, but in the what is it in the Muslim community, I suppose. And so she was just asking, what I thought, if it's an intrusion of culture, or if what would be the better scale? What should we weigh? Much more. What would take the most weight? Intrusion of culture or morality? So point is, for me, a bad cultural practice would be marriage of an 8-year-old kid to a girl to a 40-year-old man, and that's just an example. I'm not saying it should be specifically that, So yeah, that would be about cultural practice to me.
So if I ask you a why on that one,
Why?
it seems to me like that's a symptom of an even worse cultural practice, which is the cultural conception of women as property of men. And if they weren't, then that wouldn't happen at 8. It would be, the arranged marriages wouldn't happen as much, and the young marriages probably wouldn't happen as much. But if you did think women were property of men, it would be perfectly moral to marry your daughter off at whatever age to the best suitor that's out there, right?
I really think it's I think it's pedophilia really masters culture. That's what I think. Because it's some because when I lived in Nigeria, some then again, I'm not attacking anyone, but some Muslims, Nigerians back then, preferably want prepubescent girls. So it's like perhaps there is a specific, or there's a particular sort of choice there, like, you know. So I think it's really predicated on pedophilia than culture. I think culture is just used to mask what's really going on. So
Yeah. Speaking of pedophilia, can we like define like the terms? Because a lot of people, they get confused between pedophilia and like a phebophile. Like, have you guys heard of that?
Oh yeah, that's another one that people for some reason really like to bring up in this one.
Is that a diaper thing?
What's a
Is that like adults in diapers?
Well, I guess so. A phebophile is attraction generally between the ages of like 15 and 19, like adolescents, mid to late adolescent.
Oh, okay, that's something different.
If it's like
No, that's something different entirely.
yeah, it
No,
is.
that's not. No, pedophilia is prepubescent, and there's laws where there's a coming of age law that muddies that area between when someone's actually an adult physically and when they're an adult by law. But the natural human tendency is not to be attracted to women that are past their fertility peak.
Or men, boys.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
And then we have teleophilia and
I've never heard of
mesophilia.
that. New. I'm googling
Full-
that.
And mesophilia.
Attracted to messes?
Attracted to people of intermediate age, middle-aged adults.
Oh, that's what Zombie's hoping I have.
No. What about polygamy?
I'm so funny.
I'm thinking polygamy is also another one of those. It is still acceptable in some cultures.
Someone has a big echo, so if you're not talking, could you mute yourself?
I suppose I wouldn't call that a bad culture as long as you're marrying as many people as you're able to give attention to that need it and take care of, I suppose. Although I do get kind of suspicious of like the kids. I mean, like, what must it feel like to grow up with like a mom and a dad, and then your dad has 3 other wives? And, I don't know.
Well, or if the wives are your kids' age.
Oh yeah, like every 5 years you get an off the market new wife, and eventually your wife's by the time you hit your 4th wife, she's the age of your first kids. Yeah.
They don't have pedophilia in culture, no.
Hey, what?
No, I mean like as in like getting with your kid.
With your kid? Well, that's something entirely.
And
That
do they? I mean, like incest, like sister. I mean,
well, there's like
sister brother.
there's like an ingrained taboo against that in virtually every single culture. Because
I guess because it's just like a weird thing to do. Like a lot of people bring up, procreation part. But like, what if you're not procreating? Not to encourage it, but I'm just asking the question. Like,
well, that's why I'm saying that it's an ingrained taboo in almost every single society and culture because you didn't have the option of like you're saying now. Well, what if their goal wasn't procreation? Well, you didn't really have that as an option, did you, before the birth control pill? So for thousands of years, we've had that instinct kind of thrashed into us because the societies that encouraged brothers and sisters to have children with each other probably didn't last that many generations.
yeah, and
and it's not only brothers and sisters; it can be a
father and daughter.
A parent.
I mean,
and
we all related in a sense. Like
that works. That doesn't go well, right, with the father daughter.
Absolutely not.
It's not good for the variety in the gene pool thing.
It's not good for that, and it's also not a good power dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Aren't we all related though? Like,
and if there are offsprings, oftentimes there are birth defects.
Right, which is why the taboo exists.
Inbred, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see if he says it a third time. I'm waiting.
Bruno?
Oh, he's not going to say it a third time?
Say what?
I was waiting for Gala to say a third time because he really wanted to drive that point home. Aren't we all related, though? But I guess he's not going to say it the third time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say.
Why you want him to say it the third?
I'm not like he just wants to get on me for that one. Like, I mean, like, I'm not saying like we're all like closely 100% related. Like you're you're my brother, you're my sister. No, I'm just like on a scientific like perspective. Like,
yeah, we're all 98% related.
Yeah. So I guess
we're like
it's
the 2% difference that makes it that makes it okay.
Yeah, and I guess we're all committing incest. So I thought that was funny.
I suppose. I mean, if you like, I'm cousins with a giraffe. But I don't. I still think it's a good thing that there's taboo against having a sexual relationship with a giraffe.
But to different degrees, though. A giraffe is different than other people. Other people naturally be closer. A giraffe, yeah, you are related to the giraffe, but they'd be more further away as an animal.
Yeah, and the good thing about a giraffe is there's no chance of me giving a birth defect because I'm not having kids with a giraffe.
Because evolution over time wouldn't allow that.
Yes.
Wait, are you
I suppose most of us would have a hard time getting the job done, even if we wanted to.
Need a step stool.
Are you saying like it's okay to like have?
You find giraffe sexy?
Do I? They do have those strong necks
and long hind legs.
Yeah.
For miles.
Don't they all though?
They're really good at reaching the tall leaves at the tops of the trees. That really revs my engine sometimes.
Okay, that's tough.
Giraffes also have very long tongues.
Ooh. Yeah. But in response to Gala, if I don't know if Gala was just asking me if I thought it was legit for people to have sex with a giraffe.
Yeah, I know that you're gonna say no. Like, I could tell you're joking.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna say I'm going to say no to most people-animal sexual relationships.
I'll go further on you with that.
Most of the
I
time,
think the universe is connected.
I think
And
most
all
of them,
related.
most of those relationships, most of the time, are bad because they are predicated not on consent but on coercion, or that the animal doesn't know what's going on.
So are you also saying that there's a case for bestiality, like consent, like loving?
Well, see, okay, I'm assuming that this is a safe space, right? So, like, if I were forced to give an example, the only one that I could maybe potentially think of is maybe you have a situation where a woman has oral sex performed on her by her dog, where the dog walks up and does it, and the dog is free to do it or walk away. That's probably about as consensual of a thing as you could get from an animal. But in general, I still think it's a pretty bad idea. Because the dog, while it might be quote unquote consenting, it doesn't really know what it's doing.
Why do you think humans can breed with each other of different races, but not with animals?
Because we are,
we're the same
different
species.
The same species, right? Yeah.
I guess, no, actually, that's kind of the definition of species, though, is that you can interbreed and create fertile offspring. So,
yeah, but I mean, if you go, if you go back in a time machine, if you go in a time machine far enough generations back, there'd be a point in time at which a being would be sufficiently different from us that we couldn't breed with it anymore. Like maybe you go back 250,000 years, our ancestors, and at that point, we're no longer able to make a child with that ancestor. We become sufficiently different.
I get you. So there's genetic similarity between animals, but the genetic differences goes up to a point where you cannot crossbreed with another animal.
It happens on a much smaller scale with other organisms like fish. Like if certain species of fish that might be able to breed with each other, but one goes down one stream, another one goes down a different stream, and they breed for a few generations. If they meet up at some delta further down the stream, they may not be able to interbreed with each other because they're sufficiently different, because their generations are, maybe only a few months. Other than 100 years, or I guess like 30, 40 years.
So humans are close to different degrees with each other in relation.
Yeah, from what I understand, we would be the same breed of dog if we were all dogs. Like that's how little we vary. Gallo's over there masticating on my bestiality comment.
No, I'm not masticating. I'm not chewing on anything. I just thought of since Pangburn is asking for bad cultural practices, I just thought of another one. This is sexualization of cartoon characters, underaged ones.
So we were kind of talking about that earlier because I was talking about how a couple years ago I was at BronyCon, and I feel that in large part that is just that, what you're talking about, and it freaks me out. And I think that all the people that say that it's not sexual are lying to themselves.
Or, I mean, it is sexual. They would just say it's just a cartoon. Not to say that it's good, but me personally, I don't take it as seriously, but I know it's wrong. It's just, to me, I see it as a cartoon. I ignore it. I don't want to be around that stuff. It's not good. It's what it promotes. People will draw anything sexual, no matter how old it is, or make something look young, but it's actually really old. The lolly Japanese stuff. That's really weird. And I think a lot of people should just realize that it's really messed up. It's not right. even though it is a cartoon, but it's still sexualizing an underage cartoon character. It's what you.
I think this is where I think Travis Pangburn has something to say about this, because if I'm not mistaken, I think that he has thought that this is an acceptable alternative for people who would otherwise be attracted to underage people.
Sorry, I was just grabbing a snack. What was that?
Oh, sorry, you're kind of low. But have you talked about like remedies for pedophiles, and you've suggested that one of them is like underage cartoon characters, like it's not hurting anyone.
No, that wasn't me.
Then that was Michaela.
I mean, for that one,
she was the one that was suggesting like child sex dolls or something.
For that one,
right.
For that one, it still encourages pedophilia, though, in a sense. Like even though it is like a cartoon and it is harmless within the individual, but it's still unethical because it encourages that behavior. Like, even though it is a cartoon, but we shouldn't just limit it just because, oh, it's fiction. It's about what the message they give, and what they're telling you is that sexualizing an underage cartoon character is completely okay to do that. And so even if it doesn't harm the individual, but it's the message too, you have to look at the message too.
Yeah, because I don't think I agree. I don't think these things exist in a vacuum. I don't think that it's really possible to for this to exist in isolation, for a person to just like you said,
there's a thing called virtuous pedophiles, so I don't know why isn't that pushed more. Like, virtuous pedophiles are pretty cool. They know they feel this way, but they choose not to do it. And people that are exclusively people that are like not exclusively attracted, but like they're like both ways, like pedophilia, and like how you said like I think it was you or someone said chronophilia too. Like,
I
is
didn't
that
say
a
that
real
one.
thing? Like mesophile and like pedophile, whatever it's called, chronophilia. Is that a real thing?
Zombie would know.
Well, I had just looked it up when I was looking up the other word, and I'm forgetting what it was. I'm wondering, like, obviously, I agree with you that that would be unethical and maybe not socially acceptable. But I'm thinking that because it's a drawing, it would be protected under freedom of speech and art, which is kind of, there are things, at least here in America, that fall under those protections.
Yeah, there's an exception against obscenities as freedom of speech. Now the problem is that they haven't been able to successfully define what an obscenity is, I don't think.
Yeah, that's why in our mini strip clubs in my area, they can do a lot of different things that are probably illegal in other states, because we have a lot of case law that protects them under freedom of speech.
Yeah, okay, so here's how something is an obscenity. This is how the United States has defined it. So something is not protected under free speech if it's an obscenity, and here's what it has to be in order to be an obscenity. 1, if the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. I don't even know what that means. Prurient? What does that mean? Arousing or appealing to sexual desire. Okay. And if the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct or excretory functions, specifically defined by applicable state law, and if it taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value.
Okay, so
Might be able to make a
it has
case
to apply to
kind of
all
thing
three
wouldn't.
of those, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why anime is accepted. Like a lot of the stuff, like for example, Dragon Ball. I'm not saying Dragon Ball should not be like promoted. Um, I personally, like Dragon Ball, and uh, that it's not the sole focus isn't on it. Sole focus is the action, and I know early Dragon Ball had a lot of sexualization of Bulma, and she was underage, but that's not the focus on of it. And I guess the reason why it's glossed over is because, well, it's just a cartoon, and that it's Japan. Japan doesn't care about us. They don't care about international fans. They just do what they do. And so I guess that's why it
Well, we can talk plenty about the bad cultural practices of Japan.
yeah. But thanks, man. That was really educational. I didn't know that that's what applies as obscenity. But then again,
I didn't either until I just read it.
yeah, we all know what's obscene, what's not obscene. We can critically think. I would criticize the second one. I mean, no, not the second one. The first one, whether the average person. It's not a matter of the average person. That's just appealing to the tradition. Oh, so most people don't culturally see it that way. Doesn't mean, it isn't.
Well, I think it says a reasonable person also. Like, hold on, wait, let me see.
Well,
The
and that would
person,
apply.
no, it does say average person. Whether the average person applying contemporary community standards. Okay, you're right. Yeah, it doesn't say reasonable person. Okay,
It's just so, and
that
that's
would
my
per
tradition.
area too, because there are different obscenity laws based on what circuit court you reside in. So Ninth Circuit Court were very liberal on the West Coast.
Yeah, was that wiki?
Yeah, this is if you look up what's called the Miller test, which was determined.
And that's that's Ninth Circuit Court. That's out of the state of California.
Miller test.
I don't know if that would necessarily apply to Georgia or Florida.
Determine if something is obscene. Oh yeah, this is another one. This is the DOS test, which I think Zombie's probably pretty familiar with. Gives
Actually, you're right, the Miller one would apply because that was argued clear to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gala.
Yes.
I was just curious of your view of saying we're all related. Your view on that.
Oh, what's my view on that? I mean, I don't. Oh, what's my view on it? Like, I just accept it. That's it.
Sorry, I didn't.
Well, Nivik's catchphrase is that we're all connected. We're all connected, Nivik over here.
Yeah. I just accept it, man. That's it. I think I just see it. That's what it is. I just accept it. Like, I don't have anything to say. That I just saying we're all related. Like when I said genetically speaking, like I just accept it. That's it. Like if you're talking about like spiritual, like physical, like all that, like are you saying we're like all related?
Well, no. I mean, when you brought it up, and Eliyahu said, repeat that again. And then
Nivik,
you repeated
are you worried? Nivik, are you worried that you're related to Donald Trump now?
No, I just want more deeper insight on this conversation. It seemed like Elian had a differing view in where you came. I was wondering why he said repeat that.
Okay. Well, the whole like we're all related. I don't I don't have anything deep to say about that. I just accept it for what it is. But if you mean like we're all literally related, like no way. Like spiritual, like
No, I mean like genetically.
oh genetic. No, I don't have anything to say about that. All I do know is that what we like and how we are a lot of
And
it.
if I'm related to Donald Trump, I'll be okay with that. I wouldn't.
And you should be like, shut up, you 1,000,000, 2003, blah blah blah.
I don't think Trump would be okay with that
cousin.
though.
Nivik, have you ever done DNA testing?
No, I don't care to.
Well, when it gets down to about the 4th generation out, it's very small connections. So even any further out would be like really, really tiny connections, on your DNA.
Yeah. I understand that. And what I was also curious, like, with on an opposite side to that, would be like people who are family and they need an organ donor in a transplant. You could possibly not have somebody within your family not be able to give you an organ, and somebody else being able to, regardless of that fact.
Yo, Pangburn. So since you studied skepticism, how do you say this? Epistemology is such a skeptical.
I'm hearing echo.
Skepticism epistemology. I think I'm saying that right. Since you studied that, right? Do you are you an are you an agnostic atheist? Right?
I think he stepped away.
It's fine.
I'm pretty sure he is, yeah.
Is who an agnostic atheist?
Yeah, because
who are you asking?
No, I was just asking Pangburn if he is, because I was gonna ask him, should we always?
He's not an IEMA.
Is he an agnostic atheist?
Yeah, I'll tell you that he'll tell you he's not an IEMA.
Yeah, he's not an IEMA. Thank you.
Okay.
And I wanted to.
What's an agnostic atheist?
Yeah, I wanted to ask him.
I'll look at it.
Should we always use logic and epistemological reasoning in every aspect when it comes to like the spiritual, the immaterial?
But you're using it to discuss whether we should or not. Your very act of asking that question is using logic and reasoning.
I'm using it, but I mean like in terms of like finding out whether it's real or not. Like because using logic to like all of this, religious stuff.
I'm just saying you can't get around using logic, not using logic and reasoning, because you're using logic and reasoning and asking a question.
Everything, like for example, like when it comes to God and stuff, like a lot of people would criticize God, but I'm like instead of like thinking things like logically and say, well, God this, God that, would it be okay to just accept certain things in it, like deism?
Are you religious?
No. I'm just asking, like, would it be okay? Is there any religion that's more rational than per se atheism, agnosticism? Like, what's the most rational view? And how do you know that? Like, we know religion isn't the most rational one, but like, there's
nothing wrong with religion. It was the interpretation of people in the past and what they best had.
I think that Sam Harris has made a point that's pretty salient, which is are degrees of rationality or degrees of improbability. So, for example, if you are a Christian in general, this is a pretty funny example that he's brought up. If you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus is going to come back one day, which has some degree of probability to it. If you are an LDS church member, if you're a Mormon, then you specifically think that Jesus will return to Jackson County, Missouri. That must statistically have a lower percentage chance of happening. That must be less likely. You're hedging your bets even more. So if you're going to, like specific claims have different degrees of rationality, I suppose.
So he didn't say which one is the most rational.
Well, I would say that he probably thinks that none of them are rational.
Yeah.
Because that's subjective in a way, because everybody interprets religion differently. Some people are more atheists, or more heathenism or blasphemous than
to a certain degree, though. Like, not everything's like when it comes to religion, like there's things that can objectively be agreed upon that's wrong. Like, for example, slavery. Like, we can all objectively agree upon that.
Like, I don't know what you mean when you say that, though, because I don't know who the we is, because if by we you mean humans across time, that's certainly not true. If you mean humans who live today, that's certainly not true. If you talk about humans who are maybe in 500 years from now, maybe that'll be true, but I don't know why that would make it objective.
What about most people on the globe right now? Would you say most of them?
That's not what you said, though. You said we can all objectively, and I said
like for the most
people.
I'm sorry. Let me not say all, but for the most part. And if you don't, you're not sane.
I agree with you that slavery is wrong, but I don't know on what basis you're making that judgment.
Well, like freedom, the physical, the mental aspects on it. You know, we have.
I can give a view. Some folks saw that using a person in such a way where you don't have them rise to their utmost potential, you get back more in return from that person with liberal humanism instead of enslavement. It devalues. Just like you see value in yourself, you should see value in others. And having that be better for society and having a better return in society.
Yeah, I suppose
for the advancement of society.
The problem, though, is that you're still building this off of a bunch of we shoulds, and I don't know where you're getting that original we should from.
Okay, let me.
No, I'm rationalizing like how you get more better in not going the slave route than seeing the value of humans and their potential and their creativity and their ingenuity and that they can innovate in instead of putting them in an oppressive hierarchy submissive state in where you get back in return, you get back less in return in taking from a person's potential. You get more out of a person's potential without enslavement than with enslavement.
Okay, for that one, I like what you said, but let me just try to just prove my point. The reason why it's wrong is because you're restricting someone's freedom, and that people want to act within accordance to their own volition, and majority of the people do not like being owned by anyone because it restricts their limit. They want to do what they want to do. It makes them feel insignificant. It makes them vulnerable to being harmed, which they will be harmed, and like that's why, objectively in general across the globe, if someone says slavery is okay, then they're just not sane. Simple as that.
Well, these are all.
I wanted to say I'm actually in favour of slavery. I don't think it's always bad.
He's mentioned that several times.
He's
No,
not.
not
Mace actually isn't trolling. So, Gala, what do you have to say to Mace, who actually
that
thinks
trolling?
slavery is good?
Good. Be my slave then. Come on over, Mace, and
Let him.
we'll
let,
start
let
the
Mace.
and mop the-
Let Mace
damn
and Gala
dishes,
go,
okay?
Nivek.
Nivek, I didn't say slavery of the innocent. I just said slavery as a general concept. It can be done in a bad way. It can also be done in a good way. It depends who you enslave.
I'll
and
do it
why
in a
you
good
do
way.
it.
Okay. Give me an example of in a good way.
For example, violent criminals should be forced to work to pay off their crimes.
Would it if death is better? Shouldn't death be the preferred one? Like, for example, if I raped someone and I killed a lot of people, am I more deserving of, death or slavery?
Deserving. It's not about what you're deserving of. It's about if you go to prison, taxpayers are paying for your food and your shelter, and I think that's wrong. I think you should have to work for your food and shelter for as long as you're in prison.
Okay, so you're saying that we should enslave those people to benefit us because they don't deserve their rights?
What rights?
Like if a violent criminal, like, are you saying that we should just let them, instead of like putting them to prison or death penalty, we should enslave them to work for us for the benefit?
Yeah, I'm saying we should turn all prisons into basically massive factories and make the prisoners work. Because if they're going to be there, I don't want them sitting around eating free food. I want them to fucking work.
I mean, isn't enslaving someone also like mentally like messed up, like, to the slave owner? Like, it dehumanizes them?
Well, they're not going to be. Okay, so there's different types of slavery. Obviously, I'm not talking about private or chattel slavery. I'm talking about penal slavery, which is when the slaves are not
Talking
owned
about
by
what? Slavery?
penal slavery. So it's when slavery.
Anal slavery.
He just means jail. He just means jail.
Penal slavery when it's a part of the legal system.
Sounds painful.
So private individuals don't own the slaves. It's like an alternative to prison.
How is that different than regular slavery?
Well, it's different to regular slavery. Well, no,
of chattel.
That is regular slavery. Really.
No, of chattel slavery.
Chattel slavery, I wouldn't class as regular slavery.
How's it different than chattel slavery?
Well, chattel slavery is when when private individuals can own another person.
Why?
Which isn't the case with penal slavery.
Why was that valid to own them? Since and put them into slavery.
You'd have to ask someone who agrees with that.
Well, they viewed people as immoral and uncivil, kind of like you'd view a prisoner as immoral and uncivil.
I mean, wait, did you say like prison is immoral?
No, I'm saying the enslavement of others was not just because they simply can. It was validated through an ideological belief.
Mace, wouldn't you argue that penal slavery, even though constituted and illegal, is still not effective as paid-for labor?
You just got to whip them hard enough.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out what that question means. Are you saying, would I admit that slaves obviously do lower quality work than paid workers?
Well, it's not just that. There's multiple benefits when it comes to paying for labor rather than using penal slavery.
Yeah, I agree that people definitely produce much better results when they're not forced to do something.
So when the penal system is instituting, when the penal system is is instituting prisoners to be paid, and the incentive to be paid is yielding better results than the current systems that they're using, which is penal slavery. And you've seen those effects.
I can tell you, I wouldn't agree with paying the prisoners to work, because the people who are going to be paying them are going to be the taxpayers.
Not necessarily. It's actually done through the contracts.
So you want to monetize imprisoning people? You think that's a good thing? You don't think that drive imprisoning people?
And the payment is actually rather low, so it's usually somewhere around $2 to $3 an hour. It's not really that efficient, but it actually goes towards helping other things.
Tell me, who would pay the prisoners?
Most prisoners are paid for their jobs, yes. So if they're stamping license plates, doing road work, construction work, cleanup stuff, most of them are paid.
I don't think they should be getting paid for it, because they're already getting free food and shelter.
Well, the payment comes in many forms, and it helps them with their food and shelter and their stay in prison, but additionally it incentivizes them to do better work, and therefore they do, which you just agreed to, that paying somebody actually provides better quality, so which is why we do it in the first place, and we're getting away from more of a draconian system.
Hang on, they're not there because they're skilled at a job. We didn't put them there to work. I'm just saying they should work, just to ease the burden on the taxpayer. That's it. That's my only argument.
All work requires skill, regardless of the work.
So what exactly?
He's arguing quality.
So if it's just penal, I'm sorry. So if it's penal slavery, wouldn't that restrict their
penile is different.
That's just how I say it. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Penal.
That's okay.
Penal. However you say it. Penal slavery.
My wife likes penile.
Just get off of that.
No, I'm trying to say it right. Am I?
Penal.
Let's go.
All on the end, not an aisle.
Oh, okay, penal. Thank you.
That's okay. It's okay.
This is the best thing ever.
Okay, penal slavery.
There you go.
Isn't that like restricting their freedom?
Yes, it is. And I would say to you, do you agree with prison?
Do I agree with prison? I agree with prison to a certain degree.
Isn't prison restricting their freedom?
Yes. Isn't sentencing somebody to community service, putting them under house arrest, putting them on probation, giving, all of that stuff is...
Yeah, you're right about that, but...
so my question to you would be, why is penal slavery any worse than prison?
Why is it any worse? Well, I would say it isn't, but I think that it isn't. But so why is penal slavery better than how we do it? Explain to us how is that better?
Better than what?
Than how we do it.
You mean just regular imprisonments?
Yeah, how is it better? Explain.
Because with regular imprisonments, the prisoners are getting free food and shelter. But if you enslave them, then you're making them work for the food and shelter. And if they don't do the work, they don't get fed and they sleep outside.
So they should work their way out of it and then to become free citizens?
Well, no, their freedom will be determined by how long their sentence is for.
Okay, so they're gonna be free eventually. So we should just use them.
I'm not saying use them because they're going to be free. I'm saying use them to ease the burden on the taxpayer because it's expensive to imprison people.
That's a dangerous trend you're trying to do there, because you could have laws that are discriminatory in other other nations towards group, where you just have an enslavement of a certain group of people based off the prejudices of that country. And you're incentivizing slavery.
I think that's why Mace was specifying certain types of criminals. He specified at the beginning violent criminals. He didn't specify all criminals.
Yeah, I think minor criminals should go to rehab.
Well, regardless, the studies clearly show that paying individuals, right, for their labor in the penal system, clearly show that it's actually better for restitution and reform. So
well, I mean, the criminals will get more food the more work they do, if you class that as payment, but that's still technically slavery because they're not being paid money.
What if they refuse to work?
No, it looks to be paying money, not food. Looks like money looks to be the best way to do it instead of food, according to a Yale study that I posted. So given that information, where you have studies being shown and more prisons moving away
that's irrelevant, really. The fact that they're doing work at all is still better.
It's not irrelevant.
Nothing.
No, it's not relevant. What I'm saying is that if you have institutions that are moving away from your draconian penal slavery, right, and they're moving more towards incentivizing the workers with monetary money, a ridiculous small amount, don't get me wrong, then why would you? Where is your basis for saying that it's better when clearly it's showing that it's not?
I never said it was better quality. I agree their work will be shit quality. It's better than them sitting around not working, is what I'm saying.
I'm not talking about quality. I'm talking about not only just quality, but even for them themselves and society when it comes to reforming the criminal.
Because if you pay them, it's more expensive, and I'm trying to lower the expense to the taxpayer.
Right, but the cost looks to be more expensive to not do it, which is why it's called an investment and why they tend to do this, right? So if the investment is worth it, and obviously being less expensive on the taxpayer to incentivize the criminal with payment, then still we are left at the impasse where it is actually better to not have a type of penal slavery.
Why would it be more expensive not to pay them?
Because we invest in our institutions and we invest in reforming these people so that they're a betterment to society. Otherwise, it costs us more money to get them back in jail while they're still doing these things and not reformed.
I just said minor criminals should go to rehab.
Okay, but still, it doesn't look like there's
you bend
a
it
deviation.
a little bit there.
There's no deviation between minor criminals and major criminals. They look to be all be getting paid the same no matter what. And there could be a case where maybe criminals who are put there for life and have no chance of parole might be a type of slavery, but I don't think that we're talking about really the gander, not the goose here.
They won't even allow that type of person to be able to work.
Outside, yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
The thing is a lot of facilities do pay their inmate workers like $1 a day, but what they're also earning is their main incentive is good time, work time, which can cut their time down by a third each. So they really do a third of their time if they have like good behavior for good time and they have work time. And this is all different states have different, but I think that is a pretty standard look in many states in the U.S. anyway. And a lot of inmates want to work because it gets them out of their housing unit and gives them something to do for 6 hours out of the day.
It actually helps them pay the fees, which means they actually use that money to pay their debt back to society for putting them in prison in the first place. Which is why there's people actually requesting to raise the prison minimum wages that are around, which is anywhere from 40 cents to $1.15 an hour.
Wait, so they're going to repay their debt to society with money that was given to them by the taxpayer? That's just making their debt bigger. The more we pay them, the bigger their debt is.
That's not how debt works.
They're of society. Why we invest in them in the first place? Because they're going to go back to society and then become a member of society, and you want to rehabilitate them.
Yeah,
so
but
they don't become a burden.
I think we are being very Pollyanna by thinking that people are being rehabilitated.
Do you think some prisons make it worse in people coming out worse?
Of course.
You think there's something should be done about that?
Because it's a training facility.
Right. What you got to ask is, why do you think people are committing crimes in the first place?
what's making them
because they think they can get away with it.
Because there is great benefit and very little risk anymore.
Wait, so Mace, is this better? So you're saying like,
there should be longer sentences.
no, I'm asking him. So do you
Almost.
is your stance like this is your slavery, like your stance on slavery, us bringing it back? Are you saying that it's better than how we do it in America?
I think enslaving prisoners would be better than just imprisoning them.
It would be better. So, what degree of the crime should we just kill them, or should we enslave them? Like, even though if it's violent, like what do you mean by that? Do you mean like
I don't agree with the death penalty.
Why?
Because like, what right do we have to execute someone? I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me.
Oh, okay, it just doesn't sit well with you. So if someone raped your mom and raped your girl or whatever you're into,
no need to make it personal, but okay.
I'm sorry.
Let's make it more personal. List some more family members.
So if they did that, would you want them to live or would you want them to die?
Well, it doesn't matter what I personally want, because what I want would be based purely on emotion, and it will have no legal groundings.
Well, that is true. It is on emotions.
From a purely logical, non-emotive standpoint, I think that person is too dangerous to be left in society, and they need to be locked away somewhere. While they're locked away somewhere, we may as well make them work for their food.
So, what if there was someone like Hitler? Like, should they die?
He may deserve to die, but I don't think anyone has the right to kill him. Well, unless, I don't know, maybe unless you're one of his personal victims, but we don't allow people to execute the person who's victimized them. And I'm not sure. Actually, yeah, no, I've just thought of a really good reason why execution is bad. Because once you've executed someone, you can't compensate them in any way if it turns out they were innocent. But if you enslave someone and then a few years down the line turns out actually we've got the real perpetrator, this guy was innocent, then we can just look back on all the work they've done and pay them and compensate them for their wasted time.
Okay, I see. So it's not complete like I see. Penal slavery. Well, you might actually have convinced me, man. Because but he made a good point though that you bet the work is better quality when you get paid. But then again, when I the way you said it and like it makes sense, instead of killing the bad, why not use the bad? But then again, like I don't think we should just like if someone like rapes someone, right? Like let me try to go from like your perspective. Like how I see it, I'm gonna say, well, they should just work forever. Seriously, like that way
Well,
they
could. I think they should have a chance at rehabilitation first. It's the ones who are beyond redemption who then need to be locked up.
But can they be in penal slavery forever?
I don't see why not.
Okay, so we get free. So can I own a slave and like they're gonna like give me like free food and stuff?
No, a private individual can't own them. They will stay in the prisons and they'll be working in the prisons.
Yeah, that's a pretty sweet idea. So if it's just private, so is it just the government?
Yeah, they'll be publicly owned, so they'll be owned by the government.
So they're
or the
just doing like
state.
menial tasks, like farming.
I don't know about farming, because I mean the whole point of them being in prison is to keep them away from society, and if they're out in an open field, there's a good chance they'll be able to escape. I'd say whatever jobs they can do where it would be easy to contain them and make sure that they won't get away.
Wouldn't it push a drive to enslave people, though? I mean,
No,
you make money off of slaves.
I mean, if it was my version of slavery or my legal system, say I designed it all, I would make it so anyone who is found innocent later on during their sentence will be compensated very generously. So there's no monetary incentive to enslave innocent people.
No, the business.
And also, I think what
labor.
he's also, I think what Nivik is also getting at is it goes back to this violent criminals thing. Would there be an incentive for police to set up a bait car with keys in the ignition so that somebody will steal it, so that then we can say, "Ha! Now we've got you. Now you've perpetrated."
I wasn't thinking to that exact level, but I'm just saying you have to support the system, right? It's propped up on that. You know, for you. So I mean, for sustainability, you're getting cheap labor. Let's say hypothetically, if a lot of people in jail was doing all the work, how you think that would work out in society? I mean, like they're doing technical work and everything. It just grew. Hypothetically, it grew.
I don't know if the quality would be good enough to be doing all of the
we're
work.
Talking quality.
They'll just be doing shitty jobs.
This sounds like a gulag.
That's where that's the path I'm going down. Like if these slaves were doing work up to a point where it was impacting people within society, then where they're not getting paid, they're not getting paid. You know what I mean? And
I don't understand.
Well, that scenario happened in past history where people were competing against cheap free labor. And they didn't want the system of slavery because it was turning people back into serfs and peasants, and they wanted it out from out. They wanted to get rid of it.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
So if penal slavery is just like little work, like that's not very significant, is it?
Not necessarily little, just work that doesn't require much
little,
skill.
Like janitorial work?
Like like janitorial, like stuff like that's not really very significant.
If I was a wealthy douchebag, I'd want everybody to be enslaved, and if I can go about doing that, I would be all for it because it's cheaper than having to pay somebody.
And anybody who says
not very about factory work that doesn't require much mental effort, and you don't need to have high-level qualifications to do the jobs.
I'll give me just a couple seconds here, but I'm going to jump on my computer. My question: Are we talking about the advocation for gulags, or what? Where are we?
Yeah, talking about how violent criminals should be forced to perform labor to repay their debt to society, which is provided for in the Constitution of the United States in the 13th Amendment, which specifically says slavery or involuntary servitude shall not exist except for as punishment for a crime.
That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about with imperial colonialism of enslavement and indentured servitude. People weren't for that in their nations because they had to compete with cheap labor. I mean, free labor, and it was impacting them, and so they weren't for that type of system.
But it's not totally free labor because they still, in America anyway, fall under like OSHA guidelines and have to have supervision. So that's the reason why you're not seeing people out on a chain crew on a rock quarry, blowing up, rocks and with dynamite like they were in the 50s and 60s in America. And you could Google search and find articles where work crews were blown up because they're inmate work crews because they're using dynamite unsafely. Like they didn't know how to do it. So it's not free or cheap necessarily to put people to work in a correctional facility.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just talking about how it was big and it impacted people within society, and where they didn't really care about that's how come like with enslavement and indentured servitude that imperialism was doing. They didn't care for that because it was turning people back into serfs because they couldn't compete with free labor, and that was what pushed the abolition of slavery. Most of the people within society didn't want it. The elites wanted it. They were cool with it because they benefited off of it.
Yeah, but why would the elites want penal slavery? Because
free labor is good. What do you mean? You make a lot of money.
Yeah, but the elites won't be owning the slaves, so it doesn't benefit them.
Yes, they do. They own the slaves.
They don't. Not if it's penal slavery.
Oh, you're saying the government owns it.
You do benefit because like labor is labor, man.
Yeah, but the labor is being performed for the government. It's not being performed for private companies.
Okay, if it's not like free, man. I mean, it just doesn't. To me, it just doesn't seem compelling, because if the labor is just penal slavery, and it's not like super significant, like owning another person, like I don't think slavery is right. But it's just in this case, it's just like, man, like it's just not enough. Like I want
rehabilitation. It's an investment. They're people of society that are in jail that you're investing in to be productive members of society.
I'm not saying anything about rehabilitation. I was just trying to understand like how is Mace's like penal slavery.
That's not rehabilitating them though.
Yeah, I know, but I was just trying to figure out how is it better and how we do it. I would say it is better in some aspects, but because I don't deem it to be significant enough, then I don't want to agree with them on that one, because I want like owning another person, like I'm actually getting lots of money. But if it's not like if it's not that significant, man.
He says he doesn't want society to pay, but if they come in and they're not rehabilitated and they go back out, society will fucking pay.
Yeah, like we should.
They'll pay in a lot.
Yeah, like I think we should like rehabilitate if we know it's a better decision, sure. And it is, and yeah, and we can know that, yeah. But if it's just like little stuff, and I don't like it. It's just not compelling enough for me, and I don't
really see the gain in society either, because it's the cheap labor. People could be doing that job and be making money off of it instead of a person getting paid a nickel for it.
Yeah, and like I still don't. It's still I still don't agree with it. So yeah. I like where you were going with Mace, but I wish if you actually said slavery, like for like the unrepented, the no turning back. But I still don't like slavery. I just don't like it.
I did say that though. I said that. Well, I can't remember exactly what I said, but basically my philosophy is that our legal system should have rehabilitation at the very basis of it, and then slavery should be for the people who are beyond redemption.
Like actual slavery, right?
Penal slavery.
That's how we were in the past.
I mean, why can't we have like why don't you go to the extreme and actually own another human being, like labor?
Because if private individuals are owning the slaves, then that means the slaves are back in society where they can do more harm again. Do you really want to have a murderer working for you in your house?
Put them in cages.
We had that in past
It's
history.
too
We
risky.
enslaved people, like we went to war with them in punishment, and then it went to serfdom, and then after serfdom, it went back over to regulars in chattel slavery.
I understand, Mace. Do you not think people can be
indentured servitude?
Do you think our prison is there to put people locked away forever, or to try to rehabilitate them?
I think the way prison is used right now is incorrect, in my opinion. I think prison should be used as a place where you dump people who are just too dangerous to be left in society. Right now, it's used as a punishment for people who are not even dangerous, and I think that's just wrong.
You don't believe in the current rehabilitation of prisoners right now?
People
do not
people
think
who
that
go
theft
into
is
prison
a violent crime?
I think if you go into prison, you're more likely to actually pick up more tricks of the trade than you are to be rehabilitated.
Well, that's a system. You should address that instead of.
I think it's pretty indisputable that the prison system itself contributes to the recidivism.
Yeah, so I mean, if I were to say something like, we have an 83%, recidivism rate, right? Even though it's not good enough, that's pretty good, right? As far as our focus on rehabilitation rather than incarceration.
I think if we had a more rehab-focused legal system as opposed to a imprisonment focus, that rate could be a lot higher.
I agree, but that's exactly what. Like, we're consistently doing that, right? Like, we've been consistently moving towards a rehab focused prison, like prison method. Yeah, we've been improving. So I mean, it's probably not the rate that you wish, but we are definitely headed that direction.
It also depends on the individual prisons, because there are some prisons where I'm sure the rate won't even be as 80%. There are some prisons in the UK which are particularly infamous for being breeding grounds for extreme Islamism. Like, loads of people, they go in there not as Islamic terrorists, and then they come out Islamic terrorists because it's just so full of them.
Right, but to your previous point, though, is that if we're moving towards rehabilitation, right, and we're consistently getting better and better, studies show that, like I said, when it comes to like violent offenders, we can get up to 63% in some cases. And so as we move towards rehabilitation, right, and we're all focused on this, then exactly what is the issue right now when it comes to trying to have some sort of slavery in place, when your most violent offenders that can't be rehabilitated won't be working outside of the prison at all in any type of slave fashion. They're just too dangerous to be around, large population. And then when you have people who are being enslaved and they have a high percentage chance of being rehabilitated, okay, then wouldn't you want to not make them a slave because it's going to detriment their ability to be rehabilitated?
You're literally repeating what I've already said. I said some people who have a high chance of rehabilitation shouldn't be enslaved. And I think for some reason you seem to think that I don't think the extremely violent people can be slaves. And that's not what I said. I said they can't be privately owned because it's just too dangerous to let them back into society. But they can be contained within factory walls.
Doesn't really seem like it. I mean, have you ever been inside of a prison or like worked inside of a prison?
No, I've just seen it in media.
Okay. I have been, and I know people that work inside of prisons. When you have extreme violent offenders, they cannot be contained. It's not something that you can put them around tools. You can't put them in it's like they will literally go tell you to go F yourself and will not produce. So those people,
all prisoners will have the option not to work, but if they don't work, they don't get the food.
Fido, huh?
Oh, so you're gonna but I thought you said you don't believe in corporal punishment, as in the death penalty.
Yeah, they're not being executed. If they don't work, then they're starving themselves.
I was gonna say,
because that's nature. In nature,
no, that by definition, that legally would be the act of killing them. Yes,
no,
you have food.
That's literally everyone else in the world has to work for their food or die. That's the same for this. That will be the same for the prisoners.
You're violating some legal pretense there.
Oh yeah, I changed my name. I was Media Girl, but I figure out if I'm taking this more seriously, I'll change my name to something a little more on the nose, funnier. But yeah. So yeah, no. My question specifically was about, I guess, the term slavery. So in the conversation that we're having right now, Mace, correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that a someone should be designated and enslaved kind of as another type of sentence. If they're deemed unable to be rehabilitated, then you say put them in this sort of forced labor and have them, yeah, like you said, work for their food. You will not be given the necessary items to survive if you do not work, right?
Correct.
Okay,
and that's like with everyone else in the world.
Okay.
So what are you gauging the term violence on, Mace? Is it the crime itself, or is it the propensity of individual violence of the person? Because there's a lot of people that commit murder and it's like a one-time thing. You know, obviously it could be a crime of passion or under, some form of duress, and a lot of people are like, oh, he's the best guy in the facility. He's super calm, super, does whatever we ask him to do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's different degrees to even some of the same crimes. So the sentence that someone gets would, as it is now, be decided by the legal system, the judge or the jury.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like in theory this could be able to be implemented. However, I guess the meat of the issue would be how exactly would you implement it? Like, would there be a threshold for number of repeat offenses that would...
Who you rehabilitate and who you just enslave? You said like the nonviolent you rehabilitate that don't...
What's the criteria that designates slavery as opposed to shoot any other punishment? Like, how many times do I have to go out and kill somebody before you're deemed irreparable, or you're damaged?
I don't agree with punishments. The slavery thing isn't supposed to be to punish them. It's literally just to keep them away from society where they're not going to do any harm, but also to ease the burden on the taxpayer. Because if we are going to keep them out of the way where they can't hurt us, we want to do that as cheaply as possible.
How you rehabilitate? Who you choose to rehabilitate?
Before we go there, Nivik, wouldn't that be a punishment in and of itself, though? Separating them from society as a whole, limiting their freedom?
I mean, a lot of them may not like it, but we're not doing it as like we want to get revenge on you, this is a punishment. It's purely a logical, non-emotive, we need to do this for our own safety sort of response.
I still don't see the differentiation between a punishment and that. A punishment...
Well, a punishment is an emotive response to something where you're trying to get revenge on them. You're doing something just to hurt them. My solution isn't just to hurt them. I don't care if it hurts them or not. They might love it in the slave prison, doesn't matter. I just want to put them somewhere where we're safe from them.
Huh. Okay. So the way I understand the definition of like a punishment, I guess, might be a little different than what you're saying there. Because I would say imposing your will on another person, whether it be through logical means or through emotional means, it still would act as a punishment, because again, you're removing their freedoms by imposing your will on that other person, and that seems in and of itself to be like I guess a differentiation without distinction.
I think to make it a punishment, we'd have to make it worse than it needs to be at the cost of the taxpayer. So like smearing shit on the walls, paying farmers to deliver horse manure so we can drop it in their beds at night and stuff like that. that'd be a punishment because you're spending money to make the place worse, and it doesn't benefit us in any way other than makes us feel emotionally better because we're getting revenge on them. And that's not what I'm about. I don't care about revenge when it comes to the legal system. I just want to keep people safe.
Well, that seems to be kind of a push towards torture and cruel and unusual punishment, which is a difference legally and I guess semantically just from a regular punishment. Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool.
Who would you choose?
Who's next?
Who would you choose to rehabilitate as a benefit to society?
It's funny
because
how this started off as a conversation about culture. Now it's just everyone line up to take shots at me.
Well, no. I'm really interested to see what's the original topic because it did say bad culture, but I jumped in real late and it started. I guess the conversation was on what sounded like to me, forced labor, indentured servitude, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so what is the overall topic?
Yeah, I just had to jump in to defend slavery because I heard someone slagging it off.
Yeah.
Somebody was.
I was saying, who you choose to rehabilitate?
Somebody in here earlier was trying to.
I'm not going to be making that choice because I'm not a judge.
I have a weaker defense of slavery. If anyone wants to hear.
Weaker.
I'm intrigued. I just want to say that we were all in here earlier because somebody made the claim that we all, in quotes, we all agree that slavery is objectively wrong. And then Mace came in and said, "Hold on a second, hold my beer."
I don't know.
Actually, as he pushes up his glasses.
No, you don't get to dump people who you think should be rehabilitated. You have to say who you believe should. You said violent people should be slaves because they're bad.
To be fair, he's siding with penal slavery. Is there any other slavery? I don't agree with penal slavery.
But he says certain people should be rehabilitated.
Well,
so I don't rehabilitated.
Hold on. I don't agree with penal slavery. In fact, it clearly shows that we're moving away from the draconian nature of penal slavery. As far as like the data, I posted a Yale study in there that kind of showed how we're moving away from penal slavery. It's just not healthy. And I would say that to Mace, like, is there any other type of healthy to society? So is there any other type of slavery though that anybody finds perfectly just fine or benefits society?
I think there's kinds of I'm going to call it kinds of slavery that are perfectly acceptable.
Slavery is defined as owning another human being and doing with what you want.
That's just chattel slavery.
That's chattel slavery. That's one kind of slavery.
Is when you force someone to work without pay.
That's it, huh?
So we're not really talking slavery then.
It's not necessarily working without pay, but
I was going to say, isn't just owning somebody? Isn't just owning somebody?
Taking a step back and maybe allowing a broader definition of the word slavery.
A slave is a person who is legally property of another.
But we release them after punishment, so they're not slaves.
Am I allowed to talk?
Hey, Nivik, everybody, hang out for a second. Let Doolittle talk. Let's give him some time here.
So just take a step back on the definition of slavery. There's a master-slave relationship. Okay, so of the possible kinds of relationships that you can have with another individual, one of them is a master-slave relationship where one of the persons tells the other person what to do, and the other person does it. That's a master-slave relationship. So
is this going to be some sort of sex thing?
No, slavery is that relationship. So
yeah, but that relationship applies to jobs.
Guys, stop. Let him talk.
Most of the time when we're arguing about slavery, we're not talking about just in general the master-slave relationship. We're talking about a particular kind of slavery where one human being owns another human being and their offspring, and that's irreversible. Okay? If you've ever been in the military, you will know that there's a master-slave relationship that you're not necessarily in control of at the moment if you're the slave. If you've ever worked with electronics or robotics, you will know that there's a master-slave relationship between the electronic controller and the robotic arm, which just does what the controller tells it to do. So that's not a human relationship, but there are many human relationships where there's a master-slave relationship. That's perfectly okay. And that's perfectly okay when the master knows what to do, but can't do it. And the slave can do it, but doesn't know what to do. And the relationship is voluntary.
If it's voluntary, then it's not a slave.
No, it's still a master-slave relationship. The master-slave relationship is where one party says what to do and makes the decisions, and the other party does them.
So would you say the military are slaves?
I would say that yes, to a large extent. You volunteer for the military, and then once you're in, you have a contract. If you don't do what the officers tell you to, as long as it's a legal order, then you will go to military jail.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah.
So
I'm not defending chattel slavery. I'm defending there are moral versions of a master-slave relationship.
I do feel that's an expansion of the definition past the point of utility, simply because
not at all.
Okay, so
sounds like enforced labor, not slavery.
I guess at what point will we have to pull out the Oxford Dictionary of slave and slavery as a whole?
If you contract,
hold on, man. I'm coming to your defense when you're talking, so let me talk as well.
Okay.
Anyway, at what point do we have to get past the semantic games that we're playing right now and see what a quote-unquote Oxford definition is? Because what you're describing could just be as easily coined a servitude as opposed to a slave. Like this is a servant of a goal or a servant of a quote-unquote leader as opposed to a slave of a master. It all seems to be again, just a semantic game as opposed to like a definition thing. So I understand what you're saying, and logically what you're saying makes a ton of sense. Right. But the words you're using seem to be disingenuous, or at the very least, questionable.
No, it's not disingenuous. I'm coming in from an engineering
Can you explain the difference between a servant and a slave?
A slave has to do what the master tells them.
Okay, so removing that agency, what May said is perfect.
A servant is like, okay, you're going to pay me to do a job, and I'm going to go do it.
Right.
Yeah,
so the difference between us,
choice there.
There's
no choice. Slaves are slaves not by choice.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to get to here. Eventually, I'm trying to weed them out a little bit.
The question is whether you get to choose your master, or whether the relationship is severable. The question is not about you can be so like one of the problems with slavery, for example, was what we called indentured servitude. Right, that's a form of slave. It's widely recognized as a form of slavery. And that we recognize it as a form of slavery, even though it uses the word servitude. So if you say servitude and slavery, that's a distinction without a difference.
I would wholly disagree, but
the difference between a servant and a slave is forced to work without pay, but they are fed and sheltered, of course. And a servant has the choice to leave if they don't want to.
Well, I mean, you're just talking about pay. So you're just talking about without pay. So then, in your definition,
pay and freedom. A servant has the freedom to leave and get another job.
No, indentured servitude, you can't leave.
Slaves because there's no pay, because there's no money in a communist society.
I'm not talking about indentured servitude. That's slavery. I'm talking about a servant. A servant has the freedom to leave and get another job.
No, I'm talking about, okay, if you want to get to an answer of, is there such a thing as a moral version of slavery? Okay, you can't narrow your definition to only talk about the version that you think is immoral.
So that's a very postmodernist argument of the definition of the word. If you change the definition of the word slave, then there is moral slavery. Sure, that makes sense logically, like I said, but that is kind of a perversion of the word itself.
Okay,
well,
there's
why don't you guys address both versions? Because I think that'll be quicker.
So let's talk about the version in electrical engineering and robotics, where there is a central controller that sends an electrical signal to a servo motor, and that servo motor is a slave to the to the controller, and it can do no other action than what it is told to do. And in an intelligent system, that servo motor still can do no action other than what it's told to do, and it doesn't have the option of unplugging its wire. It is a slave to the controller. That's what the master-slave relationship is. There's a master and there's a slave. The master says what to do. The slave has to do it. You start talking about pay. Okay, is it enough pay? Maybe it's still slavery if they're paying you just a nominal amount that doesn't actually help you live.
It's funny you should bring up robotics, because the word robot is actually the Latin word for slave.
So there's
to work.
Okay, yeah, no. So there's a master-slave relationship that we're totally okay with, and what I'm saying is, if you can find something in human relationships that's parallel to robotics, where one of the parties knows what to do, knows what the right thing to do, and the other party acknowledges that they do not know what the right thing to do is, but they can do it when told. If they have that relationship, that's a master-slave relationship, and it's totally moral as long as the slave has the option of severing the relationship at some point.
I was going to say, so you're 100% right in the logical reasoning that you're using for the definition that you're giving. I've said that a couple times, and you're right. Like I said, that does logically make sense. However,
you're only asking about chattel slavery, where one person owns another.
No. The definition of slavery, as known from literally every colloquial sense of the word that's been used so far, other than the niche environment that you're talking about,
except all electrical engineers,
which is incredibly niche to a layman. You realize that, right? So on top of that, the slave
it's only
definition
like
that is specifically in Merriam-Webster.
Mace is talking about work. He's not talking about slavery.
Okay, listen. When you use the word slave, all 380 whatever million people in the United States understand that there is a definition that specifically said that is according to Merriam-Webster, a person held in servitude as the chattel of another, which is one type of definition that we're using. The second one that is completely subservient to a dominating influence, which again implies that use of force. And the third,
that one right there is the one I'm talking about.
No. The third definition. Hey, dude, shut up. Listen, I'm actually going to prove your point here in a second if you let me finish what I'm saying. It's a little frustrating when again, I'm jumping to your defense for a minute and then you don't give me the same respect. Third, a device such as a printer of a computer that is directly responsive to another. There is a third definition in there. That is the one that you are talking about. So again, what I'm specifically saying is using a definition that is completely irrelevant to the conversation that we were having at first, because you were applying a third definition into a first definition scenario. You are inherently committing this weird fallacy and kind of questionable. It makes me question the reasoning as why would you try to change the definition? Again, that's why I'm leading it into a more.
I think slavery can be moral.
I was not asking that, and that's specifically what I'm getting to here in a second, if you do let me finish.
Not you. The second definition can be moral. I think we're done with the argument. The second definition of slavery can be moral.
For sure.
And I told you how.
Which is what I agreed with at the beginning. However, the conversation that we were following and the context that we were using was questionable.
You're not arguing with my premises. You're arguing with how I'm cutting you off while you're telling me how
I
you're
explicitly
defending my premises while saying that they're irrelevant.
Did explicitly say that I agree with the logic that you're using in the scenario you were saying, did I not?
You said so what's irrelevant because you're only talking about chattel slavery.
Okay.
And I'm answering somebody else's question. How can slavery be moral? Slavery can be moral if one person has... Use the second definition there. You read me all three definitions. Use the second definition. If one person knows what the right thing to do is, the other one does not and acknowledges that and allows themselves to be dominated by the other because they can do the moral action and the other person knows what the moral action is.
This is why I said to address both definitions.
which was the point that I was specifically getting to. Yeah. Anyway. So sure, yeah, no. Like I said at the beginning, I do agree with the definition that you give, and the
I don't like chattel slavery either. So I agree with you.
Again, that's kind of the point that I was getting at. Yeah,
Beta.
Sure, in the context we're talking about. Yeah.
I'm not understanding May's view of slavery because he's kind of conflating it with work. He's saying just like in society, you have to work in order to eat. Well, just like in jail, you can't be just given food. You have to work in order to eat. And it sounds like he's talking about wage slavery in society being similar to work in jail.
That's a good point to take us into the TAV. Guys, the live stream's over for today, but we'll jump down to Trav's TAV if anyone wants to join us for the evening bullshit session. But thank you guys so much for engaging.
Nivek, I'll be happy to have another chat with you about it some other time.